Hi there, and welcome to Censored But Not Silenced with Rebekah Koffler. I'd like to flag you an editorial that I've written for New York Post. It's about two shocking deaths that recently have happened, one in Moscow and the other one in Washington, D.C. The editorial in the Post is called Two Shocking Deaths Are Right Out of Putin's Assassination Playbook. We're going to discuss exactly what happened. I'm not trying to imply that both are can be attributed to the hands of Putin's henchmen. Some of them are, some of them are not, but let's see what happened. Last weekend, Russians were shocked by a car bomb that instantly killed the daughter of one of Vladimir Putin's staunchest allies, an ultra-nationalist political theorist, Alexander Dugin. Images showed Daria Dugina's Toyota Land Cruiser blazing in the dark as her father, also known as Putin's brain, stopped just feet away in shock, grabbing his head with his hands. Dugina's death outside Moscow is just another bizarre event. Just 1 week earlier in Washington, D.C., a Soviet-born Putin's critic also died mysteriously. His name was Dan Rappaport. He apparently jumped out of his apartment building in a ritzy Washington, D.C. neighborhood. The Washington, D.C. police didn't find anything suspicious about this, as they called, jumper. Of course, the investigation is underway, but I really have doubts that the Washington, D.C. police is going to be able to determine anything conclusively. It is most likely that they're going to deem it a tragic accident. So, what do these deaths have in common? There's a doctrine that was developed back during the Soviet days. It's called the wet affairs, or in Russian, mokrye dela. It's basically named, it has a connotation of the spilling of blood. It also falls under the tactics called special tasks. What's within special tasks? Poisonings, assassinations, forced suicide, such as making someone jump out of the window, and so on and so forth. The doctrine was developed back in 1920s. And actually, the very first, or one of the very first examples of special tasks is the murder of Leon Trotsky, Stalin's big critic. And that happened with the help of an assassin who was hired, and he whacked Trotsky with an ice pick. Another one was of Georgy Markov, a Bulgarian journalist. He was actually killed with the poison, the tip of the with an umbrella. The tip was poisoned. Today, we have also a series of mysterious deaths. Well, the Russian journalists and all sorts of Putin's critics, they routinely get assassinated. Let's take Anna Politkovskaya, who was killed on Putin's birthday in October 2006 for criticizing the atrocities of Russian forces committed during the Chechen Wars. There were two Chechen wars that pretty much lasted from 1999 to 2009. So she was killed brutally in the elevator of her apartment building. Boris Nemtsov, who was the deputy prime minister, he was gunned down on the bridge right next to the Kremlin. He was also Putin's critic. And of course, everybody knows the high-profile assassinations of Alexander Litvinenko, who's a former FSB, which is Russian Domestic Security Agency officer, who defected to Britain and worked for the MI5 and MI6, the British intelligence services. And so he was murdered by two GRU officers. GRU is the Russian military intelligence. And those two guys met Litvinenko in a London hotel and had tea with him. And they slipped some radioactive chemical, polonium-210, into his tea. Y'all, I'm certain, know the story. What's interesting about all these mysterious deaths is that they are extremely difficult to investigate. They're very labor intensive. It took almost 10 years for the British government to conclusively determine that it is the GRU, the Russian military intelligence, that was behind that murder. Of course, we had another one, and that one was on British soil, if you're recall. So another one that took place on British soil was the poisoning of Sergei and Julia Skripal. Sergei Skripal was also a GRU intelligence officer who was a double agent for us, for the good guys, the Western intelligence. And so he was exchanged actually as part of the prisoner swap by the Obama administration. Obama gave to the Russians 10 sleeper agents who burrowed themselves into the American life with the intent of committing espionage, influence operations, all sorts of clandestine operations with the intent to feed all of those secrets that and observations that came from those operations into Putin's doctrine and strategy that seeks to either destabilize the United States or defeat it in the military conflict, but only on the condition that if the United States intervenes in a conflict that Russia is already engaged in, such as the one in Ukraine, on behalf of Russia's adversary. And for those of you who don't know, I've written a book on Putin and the Russian Doctrine. It is called Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America, right here. And there's a whole chapter, chapter 7, that I dedicate to the wet affairs doctrine, or the special tasks, which is what we are reviewing right now. So going back to Dan Rappaport, death in Washington, D.C. We had another death also in Washington, D.C. in a hotel of another Putin critic, Mikhail Lesin. That took place in 2015. So what happened was Lesin was about to testify before Congress about RT, formerly Russia Today, which is Putin's pet project. Putin set up and his inner circle buddies, the propagandists, they set up the so-called media company, Russia Today, which broadcasts in multiple languages in the world, and including English, obviously, where they spread disinformation and propaganda, anti-American propaganda, but most importantly, the intent is to confuse the Western intelligence services and to confuse the Western populations about what reality really is. So basically, it's not a news organization, it's an influence, covert influence type of operation. And so Lesin was supposed to testify, And the day before, he died mysteriously in a DuPont Circle hotel. Again, just like in Rappaport case, the Washington, D.C. police deemed that this was an accident. Apparently, he was drunk. There was a heavy amount of alcohol in him. But interestingly, the examination revealed, and I'd like to actually give you a quote on that one because it's very important. Let me find it here. Basically, this happened in November 2015, and so let's see. An official at the chief medical examiner's office revealed that Lesson's neck bone was fractured in a way that is commonly associated with hanging or manual strangulation. Okay. So that's another case. The piece that I'm referring to right now that we're discussing here on Censored But Not Silenced with Rebekah Koffler is called Murder Inc., running in the New York Post. Two shocking deaths are right out of Putin's assassination playbook. And I have the paper right here for you. I just grabbed it here in New York, and you can also check it out online. Just go on NewYorkPost.com or Google Rebekah Koffler and New York Post, and you can find this piece. Another one that I really would like to flag for you that is a bizarre assassination that happened in, I'm sorry, it's not an assassination. So sometimes the intent is not to end person's life, but to intimidate them. Typically, these people are Putin's critics, right? You already got that. So this one, the intent, we're not certain, right? There was an investigation on this one, which happened again on U.S. soil. A former CIA intelligence officer, a fellow intelligence officer. Many of you know, I'm a former DIA intelligence officer. DIA stands for Defense Intelligence Agency, which is a military counterpart to CIA. CIA is the Central Intelligence Agency. We do DIA intelligence support to warfighter operations, military doctrine, strategy, targeting, also analyzing defense policies of other countries that support military operations, such as cyber doctrine, space warfare doctrine. Central Intelligence Agency mostly deals with political intelligence, and they also have a huge collection, what we call, collection operations, which is traditional espionage. They're the ones who steal secrets from foreign intelligence services, foreign governments, to help our government develop our own doctrines and strategies to counter foreign threats. And so this officer, his name is Paul Joyle, was shot in 2007 near his house in Maryland. Guess where he was shot? He was shot in the groin. What kind of people shoot people in the groin, especially men? I mean, so, and he was a vocal critic of the Putin regime. And days before that happened, Paul implied during an NBC interview, he basically criticized Putin and very, very strongly. And so this was not a typical mugging operation, right? Some people would think, this is the area that he could have been mugged. I spoke with Paul. Paul is certain that this was another hit job by the Russians. It wasn't mugging because guess what? The wallet was not stolen from him. And miraculously, Paul survived. And this is why we really don't know whether it was intentional that they let him survive the hit squad, or and this was an intimidation, or this was an attempted assassination. Paul's wife, who's a nurse, helped him, and she really saved his life. And so what we see here is a series of events that are unattributable, and very often it's impossible to attribute them because this doctrine was developed to be executed by people who are highly trained in concealment. The techniques are very, very stealthy. And so typically what happens is because it's very difficult to tie these assassinations, poisonings, and whatnot to a specific source, and especially to the Russian government, the investigating agencies deem them tragic events. But I'd like to give you another quote that there's a declassified CIA document that exactly describes these types of special tasks, the what affairs, the fact that they're very, very difficult to attribute, and they're specifically developed with the idea that they just simply impossible or extremely difficult to attribute who exactly does it. So going back to Daria Dugina. So what I would like to make it clear here, that it's not my assessment that it is Putin's forces who staged this hit job, the car bombing of Daria Dugina, even though some analysts estimate that perhaps it's anti-Putin forces or even pro-Putin forces who staged this car bombing in order for Putin to find a pretext to escalate his assault operations on Ukraine even further. This is not my analytic line, and as you know, I run a consulting business, Doctrine and Strategy Consulting, so I am very specific that it is not my analytic line for the following reasons. First is Putin does not need any kind of justification or pretext to wage assault on Ukraine. He launched his operation on February 24th, called that special operation, and I quote, to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. There's a reason for that, because he views Ukraine's potential membership in NATO as a red line. He's written about it. There's absolutely no requirement for him to justify anything. But most importantly, it is completely illogical that Putin's henchmen would assassinate Daria Dugina. Daria Dugina is the daughter of Alexander Dugin, who's considered to be Putin's brain. Why? Because Dugin is the thought leader behind the ideology called Eurasianism. It's an anti-Western, anti-American ideology, according to which Russia and the West, especially the United States, are in a perpetual conflict over control of Eurasia, which is the largest landmass in the world, rich with mineral resources. It's a very strategic area. But most importantly, based on this ideology, the general staff, which is the entity within the Russian military that develops doctrine and strategy to counter perceived foreign threats, studied Dugin, and it developed Russian doctrine and strategy that includes the reintegration of post-Soviet states and the countries like Ukraine back under Russia's control. And also part of the narrative that those strategists, and some of them are outright propagandists, developed is called the Russian world. And according to that narrative, the people who are Russian, either by birth or they're Russian sympathizers, they align with the Russian culture, the Russian language, they should be uniting, from all over the world. And there's no other Slavic culture that is dominant over Russian, and so Daria Dugina and Alexander Dugin called for the annihilation of Ukrainian culture. And Putin himself even said Ukraine is not even a country. And so to kill Dugina, and some people believe that the hit job was actually targeting her father, but to kill either one of them would be to actually kill the ideology that fuels this anti-Ukraine movement. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What I don't rule out, and that would be my red team analysis, which is what we call in the intelligence business devil's advocate. It could be that pro-Ukrainian forces were able to execute such type of operation, because what's happening right now on the battlefield, the active combat operations have actually stalled, right? The Russians have captured 20% of Ukraine, but because the West, especially the United States, is providing tremendous support to Ukraine, which includes both heavy weaponry, sophisticated weaponry, but also intelligence support, including targeting. So the Russians cannot conclusively win this conflict, and neither can the Ukrainians. So the combat operations have stalled, and so Ukrainians have transition to a different type of warfare. It's called unconventional warfare. And actually, the United States have helped Ukraine's special operations forces to develop a new doctrine. Okay, it's called resistance operational concept. And according to that doctrine, the battlefield has actually expanded and moved in the rear behind the enemy lines. And so today, we also have learned about another possible sabotage operation in which a woman, a Russian woman, set on fire the car of a senior general staff officer in Moscow. And so, as you know, also a series of mysterious explosions took place in Crimea that eliminated or degraded ammunition depots, communication supplies, logistics supplies. So all of this could be part of what I would call emerging resistance operations taking root in Russia or Russian-controlled territories of Ukraine. So, but the main thrust of this piece, again, the central point of my article in the New York Post, is to describe the doctrine of wet affairs, mokre dela, spilling of the blood, that I describe in great detail in my book, Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. The book is available anywhere on Amazon. You can grab it in any store. And it's been praised by none else but General Breedlove himself, who is the 17th Supreme Allied Commander of the NATO forces and the commander of the European Command. That is the command that is in charge of combat operations if there were, God forbid, a war between Russia and the United States, which Russians, by the way, believe is inevitable. That's the command who has the authority about those operations. I briefed General Breedlove personally many times. I briefed NATO. I briefed the White House, National Security Staff, various heads of intelligence agencies, including allies. And I would like to just read quickly the quote by four-star Air Force General, retired General Breedlove, who praised my book. Putin's playbook, a hard-hitting, very frank introspection of the man and his Russia. Rebekah Koffler brings insight that only a Russian-born analyst could. A page turner dripping with facts and conclusions that gives us clarity few have attained. A must read for those who want to understand Russia and President Putin. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, visit my website, RebekahKoffler.com. I'm on social media. My Twitter handle is at Rebekah0132. Rebekah is spelled Rebekah. That's a Hebrew spelling. The same handle on Getter, Rebekah at 0132. And check out my analysis that I regularly publish on the Fox News website, in the New York Post. I'm published in the Wall Street Journal and other reputable publications. I am on Fox News programs, Fox and Friends, Primetime, Fox Business. Check out my analysis and please follow. Thank you. This was Censored but Not Silenced with Rebekah Koffler. I'll catch you later.